How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Crime Theory with myself, Ron Swanson, and of course, John Wedger, right here on the Sean Atwood channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Make sure you have the bell on, leave a like, and if you're interested in seeing more content from myself, there's a link to my channel, Project Rook, down in the description. And of course, Mr. Wedger, all his links can be found below as well. Now, we've been promising you going into the comments for a few weeks now, so that's what we're going to do right now. But whilst I'm gathering that, John, how's your week been?
Yeah, good. I've had a great week. Really moving forward with my pants swimming. I spent 2 days in the Atlantic swimming, and I've had a massive response, mainly by ex-military guys wanting to get involved in it. So it's
Wicked,
good. Good.
wicked,
I've been
yeah.
busy.
All right, so first, this is about Madeline McCann, and this is from Synchronized Soul podcast. And she just makes it pretty clear cadaver dogs don't lie. Maddie never left the apartment 5A alive. What do you think about that, John?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the dog's got no ability to lie. It's purely responsive, and it have no agenda either. And this dog, we've got to look at it. It was highly effective in the Haute de la Garenne. Without that dog, they wouldn't have found the body parts there, which were body parts, and it was later came back from the forensic report from an altered exhibit bag, I must add. That it was coconut shell, and the dog picked up collagen, which you don't get on coconut shell. So that dog is bang on, and it's so accurate, that dog, and so highly regarded that the FBI took it on after the McCann's
Yeah.
hatchet job to try and discredit the thing. So no, I totally agree that the dog can't lie. It picked up a scent in there, and it picked up a scent in the rental car. So
Yeah. Here's another one. Here's more of a statement again from Barbara Grosvenor. Apologies if I butchered your name. Never understood why the parents were not charged with child neglect because they did leave their child alone. Now I'm assuming again that refers to all the parents in this situation, right?
of course, yeah. And like we said, about the Istanbul Treaty, if it's an offence at home, it's an offence abroad. And what we got to look at the same time, running parallel, was the case of Shannon Matthews, which was this feckless working class family
Yeah.
whose daughter was hidden and claimed, in their own words, that she had been taken.
Yeah.
But they're very much of the lower, underclasses in the
Yeah.
UK, and they faced all sorts of criticism and scrutiny, and rightly so, because
Yeah.
they were absolute morons. But it just shows that double standards, and I think we, not just when we look at that minor level abandonment offences and things like that, all throughout this ongoing saga, we've seen that the police just pandering to them. When if that was me, they would not be uh, two witnesses in the case. They would actually be suspects. So.
Yeah, maybe you can back this up. I don't know if this is true. It's from X Patty Phi 1. Anyone explain why the McCann's mobile phones were never seized? Do you know if that was the case or if they weren't?
I couldn't comment on that. I haven't. I mean, you would have thought the phones would be. I mean, phones. The murder units and murder squads within the British police. They have a special mobile phone unit officers that are just dedicated to mobile phone data surveillance, triangulation, pinging, whatever. And murders are solved by mobile phones, and the other thing, they're solved by London buses, which are just a moving multi CCTV sort of unit. So, the one of the things we used to do was, phones would be seized always. They would be submitted for analysis, and any buses and the bus routes CCTV would instantly be seized as well. So it would be day one stuff just to round up phones, CCTV, any electronic data capturing device. So why they never did that seems very odd.
Okay. Okay, this one is from the Yorkshire Ripper and the Moors Murder video. Um, hey Ron, do Panic and Ted Gunderson, head of the FBI. Do you know that case?
Not really. Satanic Panic. Yeah, I mean, it was the sort of pro Satanist lobby group to say that
Yeah,
anyone highlighting ritual abuse is just causing chaos, mayhem, and they were using two big cases in order to discredit that.
yeah,
One of the big campaigners in getting the reality of SRA out there was an MP called Geoffrey Dickens. He did some incredibly good sterling work, and he worked alongside Will Wong, who was a good friend of mine, a trained barrister, and was at the time a parliamentary lobbyist. And the two of them campaigned tirelessly to get the reality of SRA out there.
yeah.
And all they ever got was this pro satanic lobby. And we get it now. There's a group called Hoaxted, which whenever I put anything out or anyone puts anything out about SRA, bang, they're on it
Yeah,
to try and
yeah.
discredit it. And there's a very popular sort of investigative journalist sort of periodical that does the same.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
but yeah, Satanic Panic
Yeah.
is it's opposition really.
Okay.
But I don't know about the Ted Gunderson. I've heard of Ted Gunderson, but
Okay.
off the top of my head, without some sort of rudimentary research, I would be unqualified to comment on that.
No problems. And our thing is, people have been complaining a little bit about the music in the comments. So listen, what I'll do is there'll be intro music, there'll be a little bit of music at the end, and sometimes if it's a cut scene where we go to a news report or something like that, there's music sometimes added there for it not being picked up for copyright and things like that. So I'll keep it out of the main sections, but intro, outro, and if it's necessary, and we'll keep it at that, guys. Okay.
Right, let's go into Levi Bellfield, aka Levi Rabbit. I mean, his original name was surname was Rabbit, and this is this is something that hasn't been brought up as of yet, and it's a very poignant thing because Rabbit will be at the epicenter, I think, to this guy's offending, and in more ways than not, and I
Okay.
will put meat on the bones of that one.
All right.
So Levi Bellfield, born the 17th of the 5th, 1968, which will make him 55 years old. He's from Isleworth, London, and he claims to be from Romany Gypsy background. And Levi tends to be a bit of a traveller surname, English Romany traveller first name, sorry. And his mother's a woman called Jean Belfield. She's dead now, and so Levi really is well known, notoriously known for three murders. Um, he's unique in the sort of British justice system, as he's the only serving prisoner that is actually doing two whole life tariffs. So he has to serve his whole life in prison, not just
Wow.
once but twice. So he's serving for the murder of Millie Dowler, Marsha MacDonald, Amelie de Lagrange, and the attempted murder of a lady called Kate Sheedy. However, that's not the full extent of his vile offending, and we're going to cover that. So, like most things, we need to just go through a bit of a chronology of this guy, and see, who he is and where he's from. Because if you don't know how someone lives, you never know how they die. And it's the same when that's for a victim, and it's the same when you deal with a suspect. We need to know these people inside and out. And the childhood is where all the clues are always in the childhood.
Okay.
So
All
he's
right.
uh, as offenders go on the book when it comes to the Police National Computer, the PNC. This guy isn't a prolific offender. However, I would say, and this was just someone surmising with my previous experience, this guy will have an unbelievable amount of intelligence reports attached to him. I think, and that intelligence is still flooding in. So his crimes include burglary, assault, theft, abduction, attempted murder, and murder times three. Right, so he's He's from a. I think there's about 4 kids in his family. I'm not too sure. His father dies when he's 10 years old,
Okay.
right? And we're going to sort of look a little bit at his background. Now, he's got a very, very, very bizarre background. This guy, and so if you just bear with me a minute, because
Of course.
um,
Are we going to be? Is this another sort of case where the abuse starts at home when he was a child, and it just echoes from
well,
there?
well, this is a bit more interesting because
Okay.
with this guy, um, his father dies young, so there's nothing really on record saying that he's a survivor of a sort of childhood sexual abuse or violence or anything like that. But there is, and you sort of got to read between the lines on this one, because he he had a very, very, as his ex partner said, a strange relationship with his mother. Right now, his mother, uh, Jean, um, she used to. He was still sleeping with her up until he was 30 years old. So he shared a bed with her, but throughout his childhood and his teenage years until he left home.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
the age he left home, I don't know. Uh, but when he used to go and visit his mother, even in his 30s, he would sleep in the same bed as his mother. He also would still wipe his bum, his bottom, his ass after he'd gone for a poo, shit, whatever we want to term it. She would wipe his own ass, which is, unless there's a medical reason for doing so, that is very, very bizarre, weird, sick, controlling, abusive behaviour. Um, the inference I'm going to draw here that there was a sexual relationship. This is my opinion. All right, it's never come out anywhere, but I would say, based on the information I've got and my previous experience, I would say that it's pretty much certain that this guy was involved in a sexual relationship with his mother, which it's even termed. You know, it's got a term to it, and it's called the Oedipus syndrome, or the Oedipus complex.
okay.
Now,
Okay.
you know that's a very bizarre thing, and that comes back to sort of the Greek um, historical stuff. And there was a guy called Jocasta, and Jocasta was sleeping with his mother, uh, and or was it no Jocasta was the mother. Sorry, Jocasta was the mother, and Oedipus was the son. So Oedipus was sleeping uh, with his mother Jocasta. Okay, now what is really bizarre with this is that in America a study was done, and 45% of mothers, when polled on this, wrong terminology there actually, when questioned on this, admitted to allowing their children up from the boys from between the ages of 8 to 12 to sleep in the same bed with them, which I find incredibly unhealthy thing to do.
Are we
Um,
talking? Are we talking like every night and regularly?
no, this would be, it would occur on occasions.
Okay.
All right. Now a lot of studies been done into this, and that what comes out of it, that a mother that regularly sleeps with her son has got psychological issues, and it tends to be like a replacement thing for the father, and also it would indicate that that mother has come from sexual abuse herself. Um, there is inference of incestuous sexual desire for the son, and it's really bizarre. And what you got to look at is that it's a thing called enmeshment, and it's the use of a child to feed their narcissism. So the woman would use the child to further their narcissistic behaviour, and to put a mutual dependency on the son onto them. And she sees this child as an extension of themselves, and she's not really interested in the child per se. So it's not like an over nurturing thing; it's a narcissistic thing.
Okay. Could I?
And you tend to find that the women that do this, they're very self-centered.
Okay.
They're emotionally, they're loose cannons. They
Okay.
seek control, um, and they lack boundaries. Now this is interesting because there is no boundaries here. This woman has created a very unbounded environment for her son.
Okay.
So any criticism that comes her son's way, she will react to it in a very obtuse
And just
and volatile way.
just
And
just 1 second, just to sort of get ahead of what I'm sure is going to be an outroar in the comment section, right? I don't really think we're referring to, say, a single mum who puts on a movie and sits and has a pizza, and
no,
her and her son pass out watching a movie. We're
no,
sort of, we're not talking about what that sort of scenario. Just in case anyone was getting their back up a little bit there, we're talking about a specific routine of doing
yeah,
this,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well, we need to make this clear. So this is someone who's got an incestuous liking for her son, and and really uses a son as it would a partner or a husband or whatever in the bedroom sense.
Yeah.
And you
Okay.
know we're talking about, especially when you know this guy, young lads are very hormonal from the ages of 12 really through to their 30s. You know, there's a lot of testosterone in that, and that usually results in them masturbating, and especially in the younger teens. You know, and any grown man will be a testament to that many times a day. um, so you're thinking how weird and twisted this is, and I'm not on about the parent who occasionally, if a child's sick
Yeah.
and they just showing love. No, no,
Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Good. Just
You
just
know,
to, just to clear that up for everybody. Yeah. Just to clear that
let's
up.
not be sublime about this. This isn't what I'm on about. Although what I'm saying is that 45% of women are, when questioned on this in America, said, "Oh yeah, I do let my son from 8 to 12 sleep occasionally in my bed." Um, so that sort of does go on what might almost be called a normal level. I find that a bit alarming myself, but that does go on. But what we're talking about here is a woman who's allowing her son to constantly, she's wiping his ass when he goes to the toilet. So it's not allowing her son to do it, she's doing it for him. She's allowing him to sleep in her bed, and it continues into his 30s.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right. That is very sick. And then what we then went on to discuss is this Oedipus Jocasta syndrome, which has been recorded far back as the ancient Greeks, in which a mother has an incestuous relationship with her son, which is what I'm inferring is going on here.
Okay.
And the sort of person that does that is a very manipulative individual. And in doing this to a child, so the person who does it, is displaying a lot of self-centeredness. Emotionally, they're loose cannons. They're control seeking. There's a harshness about them, and there's a huge lacking in boundaries. Which, for a child to nurture and to grow as a decent, considerate human being, there must be boundaries, and that's our job as an adult. We're not there to learn of children, right? They're there to learn of us. Okay, that's why one of the things I've been saying all throughout these things is that how much of this starts in childhood. We saw it with Mary Bell, or how she ended up because her mother was a prostitute, and very awful upbringing. We saw it with the chaos within the Borgia boys, and we saw the incestuous stuff going on with Fred West. The same pattern is emerging, and when you smother a child like this, and you uh, trespass into their own sovereignty in this incestuous sexual way, that's gonna immediately stunt psychological growth. And this is something we have been talking about throughout, that emotional clock stops, which is what the stunting of psychological growth is. So
Okay.
Levi Bellfield is straight away having his emotional, psychological growth stunted very early on. Now, how early on, when we don't know, but I would say by his offending, which we're going to go through, this was very early on, because this is a very sadistic, cruel, and selfish individual he would have lacked a huge amount of self-confidence, a lot of anxiety in this guy. There would, without a doubt, have been depression in here. So I would say that Levi Bellfield would have suffered suicidal tendencies and depression. Um, and all of this will be uh, spurred on by the mother's behaviour, which again is very insecure, manipulative, narcissistic, and with his father's death at the age of 10, that may or may not have been a catalyst. We don't know. There's nothing recorded, but information that has come out public domain wise, because there's been two lengthy trials into this guy. And this was from ex-partners, that he had a very, very unhealthy relationship with his mother.
Yeah.
Now, what is really interesting, when we're going to get onto the murders in a minute, was that in recent times, right? So I'm just going to make a reference to something. So in recent times, his mother gets arrested, right? So just before her death, she's arrested because her name is Jean, and what she's done is she's harassed one of his ex-partners. So Levi Bellfield goes on to have 11 children by 5 different women. So again, what on earth is going on there? That's just absolute madness, But she goes, the mother, I think she must have been 70 at the time. She starts harassing, post his arrest, the in 2012, she's been summoned to Staines Magistrates Court. She's 75 years old, right, for harassment against the ex. So she's not only harassing his ex-partner, but also her children, which would be this woman's grandchildren, because she's given evidence, gave evidence against her son. So this shows what an embittered, vexated old vixen woman is.
Absolutely.
I mean, she's dead now. She died 5 years later. She died at the age of 80 with lung cancer. And the bizarre thing is that when she died, he started to open up. So it shows what control this woman's had. So my argument here is, how much did she know about his offending?
And how
And
much?
I would say a lot.
Yeah.
So well, I think we can safely say, or I can safely say, with a strong influence here, that Levi Bellfield is definitely, whether or not he was born bad, don't know, but he was definitely made bad by this very, very twisted, narcissistic, perverted mother of his.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go and look at what's called his disposal history now. So he first gets arrested in 1981. She's about 13 years old for an offence of burglary, which I would say for a first offence is quite a serious offence, burglary. So he's sort of been arrested at 13 for quite a big offence. 2 years later, no, not 2 years later, sorry, 9 years later, he's arrested for assault on police. So he's attacked a police officer. He then goes on for the next 12 years, and he clocks up 9 more convictions for theft, assaults, and all sorts of driving offences. And he does little stints in and out of the old police station, the prisons and what have you. But something in his past comes to light. So at the age of 14, he is caught. I don't know who by, but he's caught, and this then leaks out into the local community and to his school.
Okay.
He is caught at the age, but bear in mind, when you see this guy, he's very steroided up. He's a monstrously big lad, which a lot of it's artificial, combined with a lot of heavy weight training. But as a kid, he was very puny and he was bullied again, which would add to the insecurities and everything else.
Yeah, of course.
So maybe a need, to go running back to mother's bosom once again. And I don't think he's that successful with the girls. He's not very well liked at school, and he is getting bullied. He's caught at the age of 14 for having sex with a rabbit. And once he's had sex with this rabbit, now how that works, I don't know. Physically, how does that even work? I'm not sure what he did to this rabbit. I mean, he would have rip the rabbit's insides out in doing so, and afterwards he kills a rabbit by breaking its neck. Now, someone witnesses this, and what happens then is he is tormented at school and called Bugsy. So bear in mind, which is really ironic, that he could probably have written that off because his name used to be Rabbit, Levi Rabbit. But that's not the reason they're tormenting him. They're tormenting him because he's a zoophilic. He's got a sexual interest in animals and bestiality. And not only that, he's actually sort of tortured the rabbit and then killed it afterwards. So this is an incredibly twisted individual. There was a study done, and it was the study of adolescents with bestial behaviour. And what come out of that is that adolescents who have sex with animals, they lack empathy. It gives them excitement in doing it. They cannot delay their gratification. So once they want gratification, they've got to have it. It's a very impulsive behaviour. They've got poor self-discipline, and there's every chance that they're a victim of childhood abuse themselves.
Yeah, it's certainly not normal childhood behaviour.
Yeah, and it's very, very bizarre. However, there's something interesting when you look at bestiality. Do you know it is legal in Brazil, Mexico, Thailand, Finland, Hungary, and Romania?
Yeah,
It's still legal
bizarre.
in these countries, which is now a lot of that is put down to farm workers, right? So they've got no other sexual outlet, but because they're in rural, isolated things, and a report did come out that 8% of men in that environment have tried bestiality. However, this guy is not doing it because he's got his mum to play with, isn't he? So he's not doing it because he's got no sort of sexual outlet. This is a very inadequate individual who's finding it difficult to make relationships with people of his own sort of peer group.
Yeah.
And there's a sexual preference. He's chosen to do it, and not only do it in a torturous, murderous way. Very, very, very strange, twisted. So this guy has got a lot going on emotionally and mentally and psychologically. So this guy is very, very broken at a very, very early age. Now, he goes on to have an ingrained hatred of blonde women, young blonde women, right? And also, he's got a perverse sexual preference for schoolgirls, which he sort of continues with him throughout his adult life. Whether he's still got that or not, I don't know. But he's in prison now. He's never getting out. So chance of him getting a schoolgirl is zero. But when he was at his prime, this guy, I would say, is a pedophile. I would say that.
Okay.
And I'm going to make that bold inference there. This is my judgment. Now, one thing that I'm going to disclose now is that this guy had connections with grooming gangs, teenage girl grooming gangs that were operating in the West London, West Drayton, Ruislip parts of the capital. I know that for a fact because I was investigating stuff, and his name did crop up as being involved. And so, not to my knowledge, did he ever get convicted of it?
Okay.
But on an intelligence front, this guy was connected to a grooming gang that was operating in the area, and I actually interviewed one of the witnesses for it, who named a guy that was connected to Bellfield and Bellfield Woods. And later, 2 years ago, I actually interviewed a homeless person on the street. I managed to track down who was actually a victim of Levi Bellfield and did tell me stuff about him when she was a young girl. And this other guy that we knew about anyway. So, this guy was a very, very active man in that sort of criminality. You know, he went on in his sort of teenage years to bulk himself out artificially with steroids, and then really hit the weights, and he become this monstrous size of a man. He got work as a nightclub doorman. He loved violence. He would get turned on by videos of violence and snuff films. People getting killed, shot, animals being tortured, things like that. He really took an interest in them. He loved the fighting from the door staff. He was a person that had his reputation not to be messed with, but in my opinion, this guy was just a bully. He went on, like I said, to father 11 children by 5 different women. He was a serial woman beater. Very cowardly behaviour. So this is a man that would beat and control all his partners, which is something that we see a lot. Domestic violence. And men that commit, I'll stick with men because there are women that commit domestic violence, but we're not in that argument today, so we'll stick with the men. I've dealt with many, many cases in the police, and those that are manipulators and bullies of women, they all tend to come from the same ilk, broken childhood backgrounds, emotionally very, very stunted, a need to control, paranoia over their partner, what their partners are doing, which is only a reflection of what they want to do. So if they're accusing their partners of cheating and having sex with men, it's what they're doing. And then need to look through their phones and then beating them. So these are very cruel, selfish, callous people because they're broken children, and their emotional clock is that of a very, very young person, which would indicate that they were hurt. And again, this is no sympathy for these people because I think they're vile. But it's very, very common, domestic violence, very, very common. And again, with domestic violence perpetrators, they will always be portrayed by the outside world and their jobs being polite, punctual, helpful. But, again, that is just a veneer. Once you put that away, you've got very callous, horrible, twisted people that damage not only their wives' lives, but that damage their children's lives. So let's not in any way belittle domestic violence and the survivors, because it really is totally and utterly destructive, and it does result in the majority of murders in this country. Unfortunately. So this guy was that. So he was beating vulnerable, intimidated people, his partners, of which he had many. He was a serial adulterer. He had a propensity for schoolgirls. He would always make comments, lurid, sexually suggestive comments towards schoolgirls. He would constantly try it on with young girls and would boast of his sexual conquest with young girls at the nightclubs he worked in. And there'll be people hanging around with him thinking he's a bit of a player, a bit of a lad, but he wasn't. He was a vile man. And he had a scam in which he was a rogue wheel clamper. So back in the 90s, when wheel clamping was a grey area, he was going around clamping and demanding with menace and violence £400 if the people that have been clamped didn't pay up. So it's a horrible, horrible, horrible individual indeed. And then, of course, I'm adding into the mix the information now that this guy was involved with the grooming gangs. So to what degree, I don't know. I couldn't comment, but he was involved with active child groomers. He was. So now we're going to go on now about his victims. So he's been convicted of 3 murders and an attempt murder of young girls, all of the same ilk. The ages vary from their early teens. The youngest I think we've got recorded. No, it goes early teens through to the 20s. But again, all similar, blonde, young, and he bludgeons them to death. So his thing is to smash them on the head with a hammer. So his first victim we're going to deal with now is Amanda Dowler, aka Millie Dowler.
Okay.
She went missing on the 21st of March 2002. Walton on Thames, a very affluent uh, area just outside of southwest London, in Surrey, and this is going to be important, the Surrey connection, and I'll go on to that shortly. She goes missing. Her body is found 6 months later in Hampshire, in a wooded area in Hampshire, and it's badly decomposed. All right, and it's sort of become a big story, the Millie Dowler. The second one, we got a girl called Rachel Cowles, and literally the day before there was an attempted kidnapping on her. She managed to get away near enough the same area. So he's not got hold of Rachel. So I think Millie was probably, his victim. He was out for a victim, and that was it. He was very, very predatory, this guy, and incredibly opportunistic. He would go out on the hunt, and if someone his way would come, he would go for them. That's 2002. The third one now, we've got Marsha McDonald, 19-year-old girl. So Millie was 13. I don't know how old Rachel was. Marsha is a young blonde girl, 19 years old. She is murdered with a hit, a blunt instrument blow to the head on the 4th of the 2nd, 2003. And she is found outside a house. The neighbours hear a noise, a thud, go out, and they find her with her head smashed in with a hammer. And what he's done is he's bashed her with a hammer with a blunt end straight on the back of the head.
Yeah.
There's a girl called Kate Sheedy, 18 years old. She's walking home at night, and he runs her over. And then as she's trying to get up, he reverses over her. So twice she gets hit. Where did we hear this? We heard this with Fred West, with the amount of serious road traffic accidents involving serious personal injury and death involving that guy. So we're seeing this as another way of murdering people. And sort of back then, things have evolved, but back then, you can murder someone, and you're looking at life. You run them over, you're looking at 2 years. So there's a massive disparity there. So that's what he's done there. He's run her over, then reversed over, but she survives. On the 19th of the 8th, 2004, 22-year-old Amélie de Lagrange, a French language student in the Twickenham area. Again, she's walking home, and she is attacked, and her head smashed open, and her body was left in Twickenham, the common there in Twickenham. And the strange thing here occurs was that the police set up an incident room on the common in Twickenham to say, look, try and capture as many sort of fresh witnesses as they can. And they were inundated in this middle class, white, leafy, stockbroker belt suburb of London. They were inundated with women coming forward to say that their husbands were beating them up.
Wow.
They were absolutely inundated with domestic violence. And it was something that they weren't prepared for.
Yeah.
And again, it was an opportunity these women had to say, look, and that because women then thought, well, that could have been my husband because he just hates women.
Yeah.
So very strange that potentially, and we saw this with the Wayne Cousins, the ex-police officer who killed the girl on Clapham Common, and
from your experience, when you've got individuals like this that choose to use a hammer and smash people's heads in, like, what does that tell you? Is there anything you can learn from the method?
yeah. For that I mean that is a brutal way of putting someone in line to say, I'm in control. I'm going to smash you because I'm in control. That it's an absolute hatred for that individual, and it's just a no nonsense approach, and it's totally and utterly domineering. I mean that finishes the argument. Full stop. Bash. You are no more.
Yeah.
Because he's in no way tormenting them, or in that he is out there just to literally out of pure hatred cave their skulls in.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
again, there's a difference, obviously, between bashing someone's head in and stabbing them and abducting someone and torturing them. Because when we looked at the West, she, she would stamp on people's heads to kill them. So many of these abductor, torturer killers have this brutality of smashing heads open, and this case is the same.
Fred West would run people over and kill them.
Yeah,
Very similar to this guy. And again, Fred West, was had influence that he was having sex with his own mum,
yeah,
and things like that. So we got very. Whereas Rose West, she was in for hurting them and torturing them. Sexual torture. And again, we found bodies with that case that were bound up with breathing tubes put out there. It was a very sadistic, evil way of killing.
yeah. And this is
Um,
this is brutality, but it's quick and it's over. It's a different kind of lust
yeah, of
killer,
course,
right?
it's like pest control for him.
Wow,
A
that's
total
that's a
detachment from
really
humanity.
yeah, that's a really good way of putting it over
Yeah,
because yeah, it's extermination over indulgence compared to the
yeah,
West.
exactly. It's hatred. It's pure hatred that this guy is having. On top of that, he's got this philic liking for young schoolgirls as well. Um, and then what we're going on the baggage that this guy's carrying around is his first sexual encounter. You know, we're inferring is with his mother, who comes across as being a vile individual anyway. A disgraceful woman, and and he's mocked and belittled and bullied, and by a lot of girls. Um, and maybe the ones that hurt him the most were these young pretty girls, and all he's doing it's payback time. It's a very bizarre thing
Yeah.
that when we used to raid brothels
Okay.
in the affluent areas of London, like Mayfair and Park Lane, there would be brothels, and there would be, the city gents visiting these, and they tended to be places where they would go to be tortured and spanked. So they would like to be sort of strapped down and whipped across the bare buttocks. We walked in one day, and this woman was caning this like city gent guy, as it were, and he was very well spoken, and he was very panicky because he thought he was in trouble, and very plummy voice. And it turns out that what these people do is they've come from these very repressed, disciplined, old Etonian type backgrounds where they were whipped and beaten at school and by their fathers and things like that. And what they do is they recreate the situation, but this time they are in control. So there's a need to bring that trauma back into their life, but this time be in control. But this time there is a masochistic sexual element to it, and it may well have massively turned this guy on. But I would have thought he would have been. This guy is harboring a lot of severe self-loathing as well, because he's just full of hate. And these are young girls. They're not going to cause him any trouble. Not now, but back then they caused him a lot of trouble because he was called Bugsy, not because of his name Rabbit, but because he had sex with a rabbit and then killed it, wrung its neck, and he was caught doing it. I mean, you if you're at school and someone says that, my word, it was
Oh yeah, that's
I'm gonna go on to a vernacular sort of simile to that. There was a police station I worked in the West End of London, and there was a girl there who had gone out with one of the guys, and on the first night she did anal sex with him, and for the rest of her service, she was just known as or whatever, that was her name um, for the rest of her service. And no matter what she did, that was it.
yeah.
And she was tormented. It really affected her. And she said to me one day, I could take a bullet for the Queen, and that wouldn't matter. But because I did that, and everyone found out, that's all I'm known for. And
Yeah.
it would be very similar to this guy. It would just be known for that, and it would build an absolute hatred in him. So we're up to 5 serious, offences. Most of them murder or murderous intent. Number 6, a girl called Anna Marie Rennie. Again, my timeline jumps a little bit, but we're going now to the 14th to the 10th, 2001, in which he tries to abduct this woman. She's 17 years old. At the same time, he tries to abduct and murder by smashing on the head with a hammer an Albanian migrant worker woman called Irma Dragoshi. and both these cases, Anna Marie and Irma, ended up in a hung jury. They couldn't decide, so we got away with them ones.
Wow. And
Um,
what was it, did you say it was their hair color that tied them all together?
yeah, he tended to want to murder young blonde girls, pretty young blonde girls. Um, there was another murder, which they're linking to him. You know, he's not stood trial for this one yet, but a young girl, 14 years old, called Patricia Joyce, and she was found murdered on the 16th of the 6th, 1980 in Feltham. She was strangled, right? But bizarrely enough, she went to school with Bellfield, and then bang, she's dead, right? So could this have been one of the girls that tormented him?
Yeah, possibly.
You know, he's sort of admitted to the murder of Lynn and Megan Russell on the 6th of 6th, 1996. And this was down in Kent. There's a guy called Michael Stone who's convicted of it. And I think it's a strange case, but both Megan and Megan was, I think, about 6 years old, and the mother, they were out walking with the other sister, and they were all bludgeoned with a hammer. And Levi's actually admitted to this,
Jeez,
saying it
yeah.
was him.
Wow.
He did it. He did it. It's not gone anywhere because they're disputing the validity of his claims, saying that he couldn't have got from there back to the alibi he had, and the alibi someone else has given him in West London in within the time scale. But the MO is very, very bang on. There's a lady called Elizabeth Chow, a 19-year-old student. She disappeared in Ealing in 1999. You know, it looks like he could be involved in that. Um, the third of the first 2000. Another student, Lola Shenkoya, 27, went missing from the same area. Sarah Spurrell, 23-year-old, she was beaten, battered with a hammer in Hastings in January 2004. Again, different county, but it still doesn't matter, you know. I mean, Millie Dowler's body was found in Hampshire. He would have taken the body to Hampshire because he would have known the area. So what you'll find is when they dump the bodies, it's an area they're comfortable with. And we covered this in Sidney Cook's case.
Yeah, well, yeah, of
That
course.
there will be something familiar about that, which gives them the security for them to carry on, dig the body and put it in there. They know that area. Um, and I have said this. I said this. It may have been on Sean's show or on someone else's, that I genuinely believe that the Levi Bellfield is responsible for many, 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 many more murders. I think it will officially come out that he's involved in within the grooming gangs of girls in the area. I think he's heavily involved in vulnerable girls from care homes around there. Um, I reckon that will come out. That's my prediction, my crime
Yeah, it
prediction.
sounds
Um,
like a plausible
that,
prediction to me,
yeah,
John.
yeah, this is someone that he gets a thrill from it. He's very, very bizarre individual indeed, and and when he's interviewed, he comes across as being softly spoken and helpful, and everyone who has dealings with him say, to meet with initially, and he displays very narcissistic, sort of low level Maslow sort of style behavior, where he is ingratiating, and everything else, but as you get to know him, his needs are very base level, and it causes a lot of trouble where he lives. There's a lot of bullying, there's a lot of stealing going on, there's a lot of domestic violence. His whole world is one of violence. Yet he lives under this controlling cloak that his mother wields over him for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Um, and it takes a long time for this guy to come to term, to come to book, and he gets away with things because he keeps using different cars each time he offends. He gets a car, then he scraps it. Um, the police screw up massively on the CCTV. There seems to be a huge lack of continuity, and again, when he's convicted of Marshall McDonald and Amelie de Lagrange, and the attempted murder of Kate Sheehy, they don't tie it in with Millie Dowler. It takes a few more years before he's tied in with Millie Dowler. And that's because, and it's something we see all the time, that police forces just don't talk to each other. And it's as simple as that. The Met Police always see themselves as elite. Surrey don't like the Met because the Met, for that reason, think themselves as elite. And they just don't talk to each other. And it's something that I've experienced massively when I was putting together a national register of transient paedophiles. Some forces were very good. I found Kent a very good force to deal with. I found Hampshire an appalling force to deal with. Surrey, I couldn't really comment on them. Wales was very difficult as well, South Wales. So it varied where they went, and they found this same problem in Belgium when they was trying to catch Marc Dutroux. And Belgium is divided by the North, sort of the Flemish-speaking North and the French-speaking South, and it's virtually a bit like Canada. It's two different countries divided by language barriers and snobbery and everything else, and many victims were lost because the force was divided and they just wouldn't talk. So if you take a country like Belgium, and then you've got its neighbours. So if there's division within the country, you imagine what it's like when you go international. You might as well not bother.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whether he's committed offences abroad, who knows? But this guy is just totally and utterly unstoppable. And I think that with the right, I don't know, the right profiler who sort of gets in with him, I think that this guy will probably admit to a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot more. And like we've said many times with this, you've got to look at the missing children. The problem with the police is they always go for the big case. The big case. If they went for the smaller ones, the shuttle shades of grey, as it were, that's where you're going to really put the meat on the bones. But unfortunately, they go for the glory all the time. It's not changed at all, and it would have been these minor level sexual assaults, attempted murders, the comments he's given and all that. That's where you're going to find the majority of your victims, and with his friends as well. These guys who hung around with him, they would know something. Why are they not coming forward and speaking out? It's really bizarre where you find your bravery, and it's not in these big macho guys. I don't think it's not what I've seen. Bravery comes in some of the most gentlest little shells you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I had one
Agree.
case and one girl, and she was 17, and she must be the bravest person on the planet. I've never seen someone so brave as her. And this was a severe child, multiple child abuse file case, and this guy was a well-known drug dealer, and all his friends were frightened of this guy. And yet this girl, she wasn't frightened one bit, and it was very bizarre. So that's Levi Bellfield for you. This guy, he's serving 2 life terrorists. He's not going anywhere. I would have thought that the police are in regular contact with him. They don't look like they're getting anywhere with this guy because nothing's really come out
Okay.
in the press as of lately. But I just say, watch this space. I think this guy might at one point have a tipping point. He's still quite young. When you watch the interviews, he's very interesting because they go for an open stance interview procedure in which they remove all physical barriers. So you will have quite an adversarial interview stance where you've got the interviewing officer in direct eye contact and physically opposite Levi, and the tables have been removed. So the solicitor relies on his lap and his notebook, and Levi has got nothing. And when he finds things uncomfortable, he starts yawning, he starts chewing his thumb, he crosses his arms, he starts forming barriers with his arms distracting it with yawns, and then he actually physically turns his chair away and faces the wall. And
That's odd.
It very odd. And if that was me, I would have gone on about his relationship with his mother. And the person I make reference to a lot is this lady Corinne Hutzterbart, and she always starts off with any child murderer establishing the relationship with the mother. The age they are divested from their mother if they're put in care, because the younger, the more the damage. But if not, what was their relationship with the mother like? The father, yeah, to a degree, but the mother mainly. That is a very important thing. And she said that's where you will start to crack people, when you find out about the relationship with their mother. And without a doubt, this would have been a massive thing that they could have, they were told this by the partners.
Yeah.
This guy's got an unhealthy, and from the interviews I watched, they don't go down that route. I don't know why. Maybe it's poor training. I'm not sure. They could have probably done with some input from profilers on there. I know the senior investigating officer. He's a good guy, in the case, he's a very good guy. I've had a few dealings with him, and I've had a few dealings with him in recent years. But the interview seemed to be very, very lacking, and they could have definitely broke this guy. They really could have done, but. A phenomenal amount of death around this fella, and I think you've just got to follow his timeline, where he's lived, and have like a remit about 20 miles around him, and see who's gone missing and who's been bludgeoned with a hammer and who's been killed. And it's not difficult to work out a pattern with this guy. There's quite glaring patterns with him.
Yeah, join the dots, so to say.
So right, so when we look at the individuals that we've had so far, and again, we're not just tying it down to any specific, because we've got different ages and we've got different genders. So we've got the young girls, we got the children, we got the boys, and we got the adults as well. And the one parallel we can draw from every single one is they come from very, very disturbed backgrounds. Every single one has come from a disturbed background. There has been violence, sexual abuse has been a key player in a lot of it as well, or the exposure to sexual abuse, and dysfunctionality. And it seems to be that it's not really been picked up on. It's been overlooked. Excuses have been made for these people, and all that's done is enhance their cockiness. And allowed them to become more and more confident in their offending.
Yeah, I agree that even when we start looking at you spoke about this a little bit too, the sentencing of some of these individuals compared to other individuals who've done other crimes. There seems to be a bigger system at play here when individuals don't get seriously harsh sentencing. And the one thing that stands out for me between this one and a lot of other cases is I feel like he got the book thrown at him in the way you'd expect it to happen. And in the cases where we look at potential gatherers of sacrifices, shall we say, they either get sentences that are shocking, or they end up like what happened to the guy on the island.
Yeah, of course, yeah, that's right, yeah, and well, this is the other thing that I want to make an inference to, and this will come out more with Brian Fields, and maybe even with Bellfield here, definitely with Fred and Rose West, with Sidney Cook without a doubt, Brian Fields, yes, and maybe this guy Bellfield, because of what he was involved in respect to the grooming. I think sometimes that they're dancing to a bigger fiddle here. That these people are connected, and they are procuring their victims for sex parties and for ritualistic affairs. And I think that is a secret of their success. I definitely think that Sidney Cook is responsible for dozens if not scores, of young kids, mainly from the care homes, going missing. I don't think they were
100%.
all for his sexual gratification. I think maybe he did have that, but I think that he had a market.
It
He
was
was a procurer.
100%.
I think definitely Fred West was a procurer of children. Definitely Rose West, and they ingratiate themselves at lower level with police officers and the need to get establishment people involved in a dirty conspiracy.
Of course.
And it all, smacks of, we drew parallels between the island individual and Fred West, quite striking parallels, but both between their offending and between their demise. A cook, again, these ridiculously low sentences and the reluctance of the Crown prosecution
Yeah.
system to protect society from his wrongdoing, which allowed him to go out and commit more offences when he should have been serving life tariffs.
Yeah.
The guy's a dangerous, dangerous child murderer, a multiple child murderer.
You know,
Um,
saying child murder is actually putting it lightly. The quotes from some of the case notes on this, that what him and his gang done, were, you know, just so beyond horrific. When listen, if you've not seen that episode, I'll put a link down in the description. And I honestly feel like Cook is someone we need to revisit and deep dive into a little more, because
we can do that,
yeah,
I'm definitely going to be bringing him up when we look next week into Brian Fields.
okay,
And Brian Fields is someone not many people have heard of, and he only really come into my radar because I was looking at a cold case of two missing boys, and ping, he crops up, and then you look at the weirdness around this guy, and it's very similar to Cook, and there is a connection between him and the Dirty Dozen.
yeah,
And again, the same thing. Wherever this guy goes, children go missing, and there's deaths, and there's cover-ups, and there's the most bizarrest uh, inadequacy in the investigation. It's just strikingly wrong, And I think Bellfield was involved in procuring children. I genuinely am making that bold assumption, and it is an assumption. It's not a fact of law. It's my assumption based on my experience and the information that I've gathered, gleaned, read about, and everything else. Um, that this guy was involved in young kids within the care system being groomed out for sexual purposes. And if that is the case, that brings him then into the same uh, remit and client base as West, as Mark Dutroux, um, and the guy on the island. And it just,
for me, it's kind of showcases two different levels of procurement. You've got homeless kids that are never ever going to walk out of the building they were taken into, and then care
of
home
course,
kids who are abused and sent back the majority of the time, I would think, but not all the time. And there's patterns here. There is areas that contain more than one individual over time, and it's painting a very, very dark picture of this underworld.
yeah, there's a reason for that, okay, and it's easy to explain. That it's a bit like a dog with a trick, you know. You get uh the shepherds would do it. They'd have one sheep that would be used to walk the route in and out of the slaughterhouse, and the other sheep would follow it. And of course, that sheep would be kept because it had this little trick, and it would convince the others to follow it. And they do the same with children,
Yeah, they do.
both in the sexual procurement and also in the ritualistic front. In that, if a child comes from a generational child abuse ritualistic environment, it has been brought up to understand how to perform sex, how to act in that manner, which could take a long time and a lot of. Right, I'm going to go into the vernacular now because I've spoken to, I would say, probably just as many holistic abuse victims as anyone in this country. I might even be an authority on it. I don't know. But I have spoken to many, many. I reckon I
Okay.
rival any police department.
Okay.
And really intimate details of what's gone on. And they all say the same thing, that the grandmother would be used, and they would slowly prepare them for ritualistic sex, for the sex orgies and things like that. But these kids would be used time and time again because that would be their MO. Whereas a kid abducted is there for to be brutalized and basically to death, or ritually killed. And we saw that with Cook, with Jason Swift, and I've heard many testimonies of witnesses, child victims, who said no, this kid was abducted and was murdered, and was brought in to be murdered for the sacrifice, because
Yeah.
that's what was required. So yeah, you can, without a doubt, divide them into categories. And also, children are also used like this sheep to get other children on board. So it will lure the other kids into a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another kid here, it's all right. And they could then get talking to other kids and come back to their fixers and tell them there's a little kid down there who's not got a dad, and the mum's a druggie, and they'll say, right, you become friends with them and get them over here, and that's how it works. And so of course they're going to use the kids to do it, because that's how any con trick works. You've got to use person in that demographic to appeal to that demographic to get them on board.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely bang on right, and it's a tried and tested method.
Yeah, it's shocking. And again, for the viewers at home, these are pretty dark cases, but you've got to understand, it's for myself and John, it's important that the realities of the broader picture are brought to light, because so much is whitewashed. And when we consider the individuals in power that are like-minded with some of these individuals, you can understand the cover-up, the leniency, and how a lot of these people end up ending themselves behind bars, shall we say? But I think we've delved into this one enough, John. I think moving forward, we're going to focus on one case at a time and see how that feels and rolls out for the viewers. And I mean, I'm loving this series, and I can't thank you enough again for giving up your time for us this week. I know we've both been a bit poorly the last couple of weeks, so I'm glad to get the ball rolling again, and look forward to see where we delve next week.
Yeah. So I've got a treat for you next week, and it's something I've had involvement with, this case, and so I know quite a bit about it on a personal level. So yeah, let's go for it. It's a good one, and each one is that I'm saying interesting. I don't want to say that to belittle the victims of this, but I think it's important people understand that these beasts walk among us every day. These beasts walk among us,
Of course.
and they're charismatic, and and they do a good job. They're like chameleons.
They are. They are 100%. And if you've missed any of the episodes, please find the links down in the description. And until next time, from me, Ron Swanson, as always, guys, be safe out there.